Welcome to the second session of the Morning Grind Live Drive Jive Archive with your host Frank Monday. We are broadcasting, I remind you, out of the central capital of the Celestial Dragon here in Twilight Zone, Old Peking, where we are talking about Rudolf Steiner's lecture on living spiritual thinking versus dead scientific materialistic thinking. And I think part of the message, hey, hello Diana, welcome out there in Happy Land. Part of his message is that the intellectual mind cannot reach to spirit, that they're tangibly different. So we get an understanding through Steiner's work of the chi field, the electromagnetic energy, the unseen, the dark matter that becomes things, that makes up the 99% of the universe, which is unseen. They call it dark matter in quantum physics. And this really was indicated and alluded to by the ancients. In China, the ancient Taoists had the immemorial Tao. But in Tao, they had this vast nebulous matter called the mysterious mother. And they said that the mysterious mother made up the greatest portion of our reality, but was unseeable, unknowable. The Tao as well. The Tao is a manifestation of this energy. In the Kabbalah, it's known as the Ein Sof, or it's even before the Ein Sof. You have the Ein, the unknowable, then the Ein Sof, the limitless light, and then the Ein Sof, or that transmission that comes down from the Godhead. So, growing up a young boy, being raised in a Christian family, one of my big questions always is, where's the method? And I had very spiritual thinking, and I knew that a lot of the folks in the church, they didn't have a spiritual understanding. They had a materialistic understanding of the Christ consciousness. And this is what they promoted. They promoted this material sphere, adoration, and really a love of money and pageantry. I don't have anything against them. They sometimes do good for the community, but there are also misanthropes and other bad guys that infiltrate and do nefarious things within that format. And so that was the hardest part for me, is that other than lip service, there wasn't much tangible. So I went looking for the tangible method to cultivate connection with divinity. And it's what led me to Tao. And it's what's led me back to the Western mystery tradition as well. So I was listening to Steiner for the last couple of days, a particular lecture that he actually made into a book. I'm not sure if you guys are, looks like Tracy's out there in Happy Land. Hello, Tracy. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you may be. On this Morning Grind edition, I'm examining Rudolf Steiner's lectures that he put into a book called Reconnecting with the Archangel Michael. And in that book, he's examining the difference between spiritual living thinking that invigorates the entire body and is alive with energy and is easily readable by other people around you, because it fills you from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet. And he said, when you think in that manner, you become childlike and you're very naive and unassuming. And it produces a sound in the mind like the buzzing of bees. And I thought it was interesting because actually in H.P. Lovecraft's work, the original, wow, that guy almost rear-ended me. Or he almost hit me in the rear. In H.P. Lovecraft's Cthulhu mythos, the original title for the Necronomicon is The Buzzing of Insects. And so I thought that this connection between spiritual living thinking that invigorates the entire being like the buzzing of insects in the mind, was very interesting and thought-provoking. But he said that modern day scientific materialists have abandoned this style of thinking because it can expose the reality of their thoughts to everyone around them. And so they developed this logical dead thinking of mathematics and three-dimensional puerile logic to explain the material realm. And they found that in this, there's great silence, that it doesn't activate the mind, and they can remain more autonomous and hidden. So evildoers really like this kind of thinking because it doesn't readily convey to others the thoughts in your mind by your actions and your facial expressions and so on and so forth. You can hide getting up to no good a lot easier with that dead intellectual dichotomy. And I thought that really touched a chord in me because as a young man, I was a bit of a natural mystic and a natural born magician and wanted to connect deeply with God, but found that the materialism of the ordinary organized religious experience was very lacking in that. And so when I discovered Qigong and Chinese martial arts with the practice of calligraphy and poetry and using natural medicines, elixirs, and invocations of powerful magic, and I thought that was probably closer to what the Christ consciousness was really all about. It was about healing and teaching and deep meditation on the word and learning to vibrate the word to create genuine magical effects in the material realm. But a lot of the churches, they say that sorcery, of course, is of the devil, and they don't understand magic, and they don't understand the Christian mystics and Rosicrucianism, and have a very misunderstood interpretation of even Freemasonry mostly because of the Disneyland Freemasons. Each lodge has its own individual practices, and some of them are a little bit misled, And so carrying on the tradition of temple nights may seem odious to some, but as an individual practitioner, someone who has discovered the way independently, not with a secret society, and then later, much later in life, in my 30s and 40s, well, when I was young too, I joined certain secretive groups, but it wasn't until I was 45 that I joined my first official temple, and it was all, up until that point, it was all self-initiatory practices. But it was quite interesting meeting an achieved master magi like Poke Runyon. I went to his retreat out in the mountains of California and received initiation to the Temple of Astarte. And he was able to recognize that I had done a lot of practice on my own. And there is true seeing in the spirit vision, scrying in the spirit vision. And all of these things are done openly before God and his archangels. In fact, It's the divine tetragrammaton and the four archangels that we call upon in our magic. And the Lord's Prayer is the Kabbalistic cross in the ritual of the pentagram. You know, Ata Malkuth Vegubra Vegudla Leolam Amen is Hebrew for Holy art thou, Lord of the universe, you know, so on and so forth. And it's the last part. Thy kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses. For thine is the power, the kingdom, and the glory forever and ever. So that's Ata, that last part. You can look it up. It's real simple. You know, it's nothing overly esoteric. It's only esoteric if you don't have just a basic understanding of Hebrew. So living thinking, yeah, it really invigorates the mind. You know what gets the living spiritual thinking going like nothing else? A good yo. Come on, let's see some yos out there in Happy Land. I hope y'all good looking sexy people are doing well out there in Happy Land. This morning we went deep into the teaching of Rudolf Steiner. Now, I don't agree with everything Steiner says. He was a big fan of Blavatsky and the secret teaching of all ages. And those guys kind of all, they supported each other to some extent. Blavatsky, though, she's neither here nor there. She was pretty much proven to be a fraud and a plagiarist, though. And so I have trouble. See, I got a lot of my early teaching from Master Ni Hua Qing, who is the chancellor of Yosan University and the founder of 7 Star Communications and Daostar.com. He's a doctor of Oriental medicine, first and foremost, but he's also the Grand Master of Tao for one of the sects of enlightenment that escaped China during the revolution. And he said that, you know, an individual can bring forward a teaching, right? And they can be good to carrying on and passing down the tradition. He said, but the teaching can't always be separated from the individual. Meaning that if a spiritual teacher isn't really living it, then they're not necessarily really interpreting it correctly. And they can't help but make mistakes. So very few are suitable for bringing forth the transmission. They won't be able to serve as guides for the whole year round. And I met and lived with Master Ni at his home retreat in Oregon, where he's an LA guy. Santa Monica is where his business is based, but he had a retreat in Oregon on 100 acres of forested hillside. And I went out there and I stayed and lived with him as his live-in assistant, you know, housekeeper, secretary, book editor, that type of thing. I was taking over for another gal who was going on to do other things. She was going on to get her degree in Chinese medicine. And so he needed a new assistant, and it was kind of my pursuit to do that anyway. I wanted to be the whole Daniel Son for Mr. Miyagi. And I gotta tell you, I wasn't impressed. He had a lifelong 75 generations of Taoist masters, and I saw him as the pinnacle, the epitome of Taoist spirituality. But actually going to live with him, I found that the teacher doesn't live up to the teaching. And sometimes you're better off just working individually as an individual practitioner and focusing on the teaching and the learning and the practice, because you only need a certain amount of initiation and training under a mystic until you get it. And once you get it, you don't need to keep looking for a guru and spending money and giving away your spiritual authority to others. You need to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and do the practice. Because when you get too close to some of these people, it all falls apart. The illusion that you build up in your mind of what the spiritual reality is, it falls apart with a lot of them. Now, I'm not saying that Master Ni wasn't one of the highest level practitioners of the Tao. He was. But the Tao makes you a very ordinary person. And when it comes down to day-to-day living, like, it's basically just have your breakfast, do your work, next day, rinse and repeat. I mean, there's nothing flowery, or there aren't any fireworks and so on and so forth. The fireworks and the great awakening of the Kundalini and those types of things, they're very limited amounts of experience within the reality of Tao. So the great Taoist masters, they always say that the Tao is like a glass of water. You don't know, only the drinker knows what it tastes like. And it doesn't have anything to offer the eye. It doesn't have anything to offer the taste buds. You know, it's not like puffing on a delicious JP Farrell. It's tasteless, it's flavorless, and it's boring. It's not a secret space program with Disneyland space Nazis building bases on the backside of the moon. It's not a bunch of blue chickens in blue spheres floating into your living room. It's not even UFOs, man. You can manifest UFOs like Dr. Greer and the fifth, what does he call it? Encounter of the fifth kind, close encounters of the fifth kind. But that's just more, those are more Christmas tree decorations. They're not the reality. The reality is, you know, getting up, making breakfast for the family, cleaning house, and 99.9% of the time, it's just the drudgery. It's husking grain and preparing food and doing some woodwork, writing in your journal, your invocations and meditation. 99% of the time, that's all it is. But people love the devious bypaths, you know. They love the fact that there's a new boogeyman out there. And now there's a great battle between the clean and the unclean. And they love the Disneyland e-ticket ride, you know. And occasionally it's okay. And when you work hard enough and long enough, you deserve a paranormal spiritual experience that's enlightening. And believe me, I've had my fair share. I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that there's an omnipotent, all-powerful force that resides beyond the material sphere, and that it empowers and awakens us at key times throughout our life. But it's not an everyday, all-day type of thing. And that's what people want. They want direct connection with the divine. They want a single incantation like faith in Jesus that will liberate them. And it's not true. I'm sorry to tell you, that's not the way of Tao, at least. There is no single incantation like Yod He Va He or Ju Tian Yin Yuan Rei Sung Pu Fa Tian Zun. I mean, the practice, the method is that incantation. The method is what never changes. You can choose any method, but once you get it, once you grok it, once you've had realization, then that's all there is. There's the constant, continual practice of the gradual refinement of the gross human energies into subtler levels of spiritual energy that enliven the mind with living spiritual thought. And you have to go beyond the puerile, gross, three-dimensional logic of the material sphere. Not everyone who grows a nice beard and wears a solemn robe is a good spiritual teacher. And some of them are just bad guys. And not all guys who look like bad guys, you know, puffing on a ferrule and wearing a fish hook on their ball cap. Not all those ordinary guys are entirely mundane. Some of them are spiritual teachers hiding out. You know, and they want to fit in enough with the mundane world that they don't get called out. There's some great stories about the Tao here in the Central Kingdom and the leadership, you know, like the Yellow Emperor and different people that would say, hey, all the great Taoist masters come forward and show me your tricks, you know, bring your teaching forward and meet with the big shot, you know, whether it be this guy, that guy, or the other guy. They've done it time and time again. And when they get all the masters at the feast, you know, then they publicly execute them and release all their spiritual energy. And then the dark celestials absorb it and do a great ritual to strengthen their power and their darkness. And so the old sages encoded this in some of the texts. And they said, you got to be wary of the dark celestials. And in times of great darkness in the I Ching, what we call double darkness, the abyss, they say in those times, keep your mouth shut as tight as a bottle and don't reveal your light. I had a buddy in the countryside. This guy turned out to be a real bad guy, but he wrote for the newspaper. And he was really proud of his level of intellectualism, and I admired him. I mean, I read his articles and I'm like, good God, I've been studying English my entire life and I've enrolled myself, I think it was my second or third year at university, and I'm like, I've enrolled myself in an English literature program, and this guy writes like dynamite. I could never write that good. I can't even write that good now after, you know, an additional 20 years of studying the language and practicing every day. I can write some decent short stories, but I couldn't write like that guy could with natural talent. Just ain't got it. And but I do try, and I do get better year after year. Anyway, point of the story is, he said, but Frank, don't you know that a single candle dispels the darkness? Because I told him, he was kind of beating his head against the wall. I'm like, we're out here in the middle of the sticks, and I said, you write these wonderfully enlightening articles, but I said, don't you feel like your breath is wasted on these rural folk? And he said, a single light, a single candle will dispel the darkness. He said, even if I'm the only one lighting a candle, then I can dispel the darkness. And I said, yeah, that's a great analogy. I said, but there's always a chance. If you light that candle among bandits and thieves, they will murder you. And he didn't understand it. He didn't get it. He's like, it made him think. He's like, yeah, that's right. And I could see a little bit of fear in him when I told him that. I said, yeah, you don't want to light that candle when you're in the darkness and you're among a bunch of bandits and criminals and thieves. You're surrounded by them, and you light the candle to show them where you are. I said, you got to be wary of that, brother. And anyway, he ended up turning out to be a really bad guy, but a really good writer. And I thought his mind was in the right place, but it wasn't. And you can't separate the man from the teaching. If he's got this wonderful teaching going forward, but then it turns out that in his deepest heart of hearts, he's filled with darkness and evil, then you can't support them. So you got to watch out for guys like that. Like, I've watched Good and Cox, what is that guy's name? Will Cox and Good, and I could see the evil emanating from them, the darkness in their aura. And I worked with Master Nee. Nihua Ching, and he was a beloved man. I've worked with Poke. Oh, good God. Poke radiates the energy of a treasure chest filled with diamonds and happiness and love. Like, he looks wicked evil. Like, I mean, you could see his kindness too, but like, look at the picture he chose for his books. I mean, it's magic. It's Solomonic magic. But he looks like he's got a little bit of an evil glint in his eye. But good God, you meet the man on the spiritual realm, like in the astral realm. I've met him. I've communed with him several times in the astral through lucid dreaming and through meditation, like upright, ritual work. But I've met him in person and spent about a week at his home, his retreat. And so I've met spiritual leaders who have the light inside them, the living thought of spirit, not the dead intellectual dichotomy of scientific materialism, but living thought. And those are the only guys that should be supported along the way. Like, I've been listening to Damon Eccles, and he's a powerful practitioner of magic, but he's wrong in a lot of things, and he harbors a lot of darkness. And I've been listening to Sheridan Thomas as well, and he harbors a lot of darkness. These guys, they have some spiritual understanding and magical talent, but they're harboring darkness, and that's not something you can do on the way. It shows like turning on an ultraviolet light to the spiritually sensitive. You'll be known by your words and your actions and the truth of your nature. So watch out for bad guys, y'all. Don't support bad guys just because they got a great flowery teaching. Try to get behind those people who radiate the light of spiritual truth. And I'm not always the best representative of the Tao and the path of the Magi, but I do have the heart of a child, and I am a natural magician. So let us pray. Holy art thou, Lord of the universe, the vast and the mighty one, creator of heaven and earth, maker of all things visible and invisible, master of the light and the darkness, he who was, is, and shall be. We adore thee and we invoke thee in the name of thy only begotten Son, Jesus the Christ, and his beloved wife, Mary Magdalene, high priestess of the temple, Astarte, Columbia, and the great octahedron above, generating the fathomless Tao in all directions and dimensions, the solid, square tetragrammaton of pure golden energy beneath us as a solid level foundation. Send a cleansing wind to disperse all intellectual dichotomy and endless human opinion. Guide and protect us through the innumerable snares of the earthly sphere. Make us great warriors, scholar warriors along the path of Tao, and inspirited, charged with the Holy Spirit and living thought, so that we can cut through the puerile, three-dimensional logic of dead thinking and blast away the ivory towers of those who would try to fool us into a path of material consumerism that's not only having a hell of a time on our planet, but also gets people into a situation of fear and scarcity. Make it known to all people that the nature of the universe is abundance. We ask all these things, and the name of the horn gods, Cthulhu has risen, the mother Hydra, the father Dagon, the pantheons of the woods, Greek, Roman, Chinese, Celtic, whatever pantheon you appreciate, enjoy it, because it's a representation of the divine. And it all leads back to the Godhead. There's no reason to argue and bicker about that type of thing. All are welcome under the umbrella of Tao. So it is commanded and confirmed, so mote it be. Y'all good looking sexy people out in Happy Land, stay well. I'm gonna do some shout outs here. Thanks for joining me in the chat today. I see Little Fish. Little Fish, say hello to your daughter. Little Fish is our in-house astrologer. If you need a reading, you should seek her out. Diane Lynn, hello out there in Happy Land. I'll try to get a chance to read all the Happy Land transmissions, the ideas room. I think I saw, hey, Sandra Sue's out there in Happy Land. Sandra Sue, how are you? I hope you are doing well. And give me a yo if you can feel the charge of spirit. Let me see, did Paul show up this morning, guys? It seems like I even saw Anthony out there. So a shout out to everybody out in Happy Land. Y'all keep on keeping on. Keep up the good fight and good magic. I will see you in the abodes of the future. Yeah, I'm gonna head over to the Coast to Coast chat. So if you do watch the Coast to Coast AM, let's get over there in chat time. And I will see you guys over there. Y'all good looking sexy people, stay well. As above, so below, into the abodes of the future. Breakfast time.